All right, get ready. We're diving deep into the world of software construction today, and we're going to be using excerpts from Code Complete by Steve McConnell as our guide.
This is a fascinating book.
It is. It's a classic. We're going to break it down, try to avoid any jargon, and really get to the heart of how software is built, how it's managed, how the complexity is handled.
Right, and what's interesting about Code Complete is its focus on the construction phase of software development. That's where the planning and design turn into actual working code.
So it's sort of like if the planning and design are the blueprints, this is where the house actually gets built, right?
Exactly. And, you can really see the difference between a novice and a master craftsman during this phase. McConnell points out that programmer productivity can vary by a factor of 10 or even 20 during construction.
10 to 20, wow. That's a huge difference. So it's not just about writing lines of code, it's about writing them effectively.
Right. And one of the biggest factors is how well the groundwork is laid before construction even begins. McConnell uses a great analogy. Imagine a contractor trying to estimate a project without knowing what the client wants built.
That's impossible. I mean, you wouldn't start building a house without knowing how many rooms it needs, or even if it's going to be a house or an apartment building.
Yeah, that's the point. Code Complete really emphasizes the importance of these prerequisites. First, you need to define the problem, make sure you're building the right thing. Then you need those detailed requirements, what the software needs to do, how it performs, security, all that. And finally, the architecture, the framework for the project.
It sounds like skipping these steps is a recipe for disaster.
Absolutely. And changing requirements after you've already started coding, that can be incredibly costly. It's like trying to move a wall after the house is already built.
So you're really setting yourself up for success by taking the time to get these things right from the start. I like that analogy.
It really highlights the holistic approach that Code Complete advocates for. It's not just about coding, it's about strategy.
And speaking of strategy, McConnell really emphasizes the importance of managing complexity, right?
Yes. He argues that it's the most crucial aspect of software development.
Now, why would managing complexity be more important than, say, just writing good quality code or writing code efficiently?
Well, think about it. Software involves so much detail. Bits, algorithms, interactions between different components, huge data sets. It's all got the potential to become incredibly complex.
It sounds like it could get out of control pretty quickly.
Exactly. And that's where accidental complexity comes in. He differentiates that from the essential complexity, which is inherent to the problem. Accidental complexity is the stuff that's introduced by bad design choices or a lack of structure.
So you're saying it's not just about solving the problem, it's about solving it elegantly and in a way that's manageable.
Right. Code Complete provides a bunch of strategies to minimize that accidental complexity. One of the big ones is using well-defined classes and routines. It's like breaking a big problem down into smaller, more manageable pieces.
Oh, like using building blocks to create something more complex.
Exactly. That way you don't have to understand the entire system at once, just the individual pieces.
That makes a lot of sense.
And then there's the concept of information hiding.
Okay, now you've got me curious. What's information hiding?
Well, think of it like building walls between different parts of your code. Each component only reveals what's absolutely necessary for others to interact with it. The internal details are kept hidden.
Ah, so you can focus on the task at hand without getting bogged down in the details of other parts of the system.
Right. And it also helps isolate the impact of changes. You can modify one part without accidentally breaking something else.
It's like you said before, trying to fix the plumbing without rewiring the entire house.
Precisely. And McConnell also talks about design patterns, ready-made solutions for common problems.
Like having a library of pre-built components you can use.
That's the idea. He also emphasizes code layout and style for readability, but maybe we can get into that a little later.
Okay, it sounds like there's a lot more to unpack here. What else can we learn from this deep dive into the construction phase?
Well, we've just scratched the surface. There is a whole world of tools, techniques, and even personal character traits that McConnell explores.
Okay, we are definitely going to need to continue this conversation. We've talked about how important it is to have a strong foundation before you even start coding, and how managing complexity is like the key to creating software that's not only functional, but also, robust and maintainable. So what about the tools? What can actually help us achieve those goals during this construction phase?
That's a perfect question, actually. McConnell talks quite a bit about the tools of the trade. And, it's an area where even seasoned developers can probably learn a thing or two.
You always hear that phrase, the right tool for the job, but I feel like we often underestimate just how much of a difference using the right tools can make, especially in software, right? It's so complex.
Absolutely. And he breaks it down into different categories, starting with design tools. It's like, think of those advanced diagramming tools where you can really visualize the structure of your software.
So it's not just sketching something out on a whiteboard.
Yeah, it's much more structured and interactive. You can actually model the relationships, track dependencies, and keep everything consistent.
That's cool. So you're working through the design before you even write any code.
Right. Then you've got your code creation tools. Those are the compilers and linkers. They translate your code into something the computer can understand.
Right. That's essential.
Yeah.
But McConnell also mentions these source code tools, which I don't think everyone always considers. What are those all about?
So those source code tools are like your specialized power tools for programmers. You've got things like advanced text editors, syntax highlighting, auto-completion, and even code refactoring tools.
Oh, that sounds helpful. Like catching errors before they become a problem.
Exactly. And then there's version control systems too, keeping track of changes, allowing collaboration, reverting back if you need to. It's essential for any software project, big or small.
It's amazing how these tools can make you more productive and improve the quality of the code at the same time.
And we can't forget the executable code tools. These help you understand how your code behaves in a live environment.
Oh, right, like debuggers.
Exactly. You can step through your code line by line, figure out why something's going wrong. And then there's profilers. They give you insights into how much time is spent where, helping you optimize performance.
It's like having a stopwatch for your code. So cool.
And don't forget, McConnell has a whole section on code tuning, improving performance. So even when your code is working, there are tools to help you make it even better.
Wow, it seems like a lot of thought goes into selecting the right tools for each stage.
For sure. But let's shift gears a little bit. We've talked about laying that foundation and using the right tools. What about the human element? Does Code Complete talk about personal character and collaboration?
That's a great question because at the end of the day, software development is a human endeavor.
Totally. And he has a whole chapter dedicated to the importance of personal character in software construction. He argues that certain traits are crucial for success, like intellectual honesty, for example.
That's an interesting one. What does he mean by that in the context of software development?
He's talking about being willing to admit your mistakes, acknowledging your limitations, being open to feedback, putting the software above your ego.
I think that applies to so many fields, not just software.
Totally. He also stresses the importance of communication and cooperation within a team. These projects are rarely solo endeavors, and you need to be able to communicate effectively.
Which is probably where practices like code reviews and pair programming come in.
Right. Those aren't covered extensively in these excerpts, but the importance of teamwork and knowledge sharing definitely comes through.
It's like Code Complete is encouraging a certain mindset, valuing honesty, collaboration, and striving for excellence.
Absolutely. And another key factor he points out is the impact of project size.
Right. How's the scale of a project influence the construction process?
Well, he makes it clear that project size really affects the whole approach to development and the techniques used during construction.
It makes sense. Managing a small project is completely different from coordinating a huge project with hundreds of people.
Exactly. And one of the surprising things he points out is that productivity per line of code actually tends to decrease as the project gets bigger.
Really, I would thought larger teams could be more efficient.
Yeah, it's a common assumption. But the bigger the project, the more complex the communication, the more potential for misaligned goals. There's just more code to manage.
So it's not just about throwing more people at the problem. You need to adapt your processes, your communication, and your tools.
Exactly. He also notes that certain activities like architecture, integration, and testing become even more important on those larger projects.
I can see why. In a small project, you might be able to get away with less planning up front. But that wouldn't work with a huge project.
It would be chaos. So Code Complete really emphasizes that clear architectural vision from the start, defining the interfaces between components and having rigorous testing throughout. All of that is essential to keep those large projects manageable and make sure the software is high quality.
This has been so eye-opening. It's more than just coding techniques. It's about strategy, collaboration, even a bit of philosophy.
It really is, and we've only scratched the surface of what Code Complete has to offer. But before we wrap up, I'm curious, what are some of the takeaways that have really resonated with you so far?
We've really gone deep into Code Complete. I'm impressed with how McConnell approaches software construction, not just as, a technical thing, but also as this intellectual and collaborative process.
It's a multifaceted field, for sure. What are some of the things that have really stuck with you from this deep dive?
I think one of the biggest things for me was realizing the importance of managing complexity. It's not just about like writing code that works, but writing code that's understandable and can adapt and change over time.
Yeah, it's like the difference between building a house of cards that falls apart if you breathe on it wrong and building a solid structure that can stand up to, anything.
And it's not even just limited to software, right?
Right.
Clear communication, breaking down complex tasks, choosing the right tools, that's all important no matter what you're doing.
Absolutely. Building a bridge, writing a book, planning a big event. It's all about managing complexity and coordinating efforts.
Code Complete really makes you think about how important those foundational elements are, and the human element too, not just the technical stuff.
Yeah, you have to remember that we're not perfect. We make mistakes, we have limitations, and we need to be able to work together effectively.
This deep dive has given me a whole new perspective on software development. It's so much more than just, typing on a keyboard. It's about problem solving, creativity, discipline, and always striving to be better.
Exactly. And creating solutions that are not only functional, but also elegant and maintainable. That's what sets great software apart.
So as we wrap up this exploration of Code Complete, I have a little challenge for you. Think about how you can apply these principles in your own work, your projects, even your daily life.
How can you take those complex tasks and break them down into smaller, more manageable pieces?
Yeah, how can you improve communication with your team, your colleagues, your family? What tools can you use to make your work more efficient and, maybe even a little bit more enjoyable?
And remember, managing complexity, it's not just a skill, it's a mindset.
It's about being deliberate, thoughtful, always looking for ways to improve how you approach things, whether you're coding or taking on any other challenge.
Well said.
That's all for our deep dive into Code Complete. We hope you found it insightful and maybe even a little bit inspiring. Remember, knowledge is only valuable if you use it. So go out there, take these ideas, and build something amazing.